In the late 1960s, California was living in two worlds at once. While San Francisco celebrated the hippie movement and the counterculture revolution, a silent shadow began moving along the state's dark highways, a shadow no one saw, but everyone felt. Between 1968 and 1969, 5 people were murdered in sudden and brutal attacks. Young couples at secluded lovers' lanes, lone drivers, victims seemingly chosen at random. And then, the letters began to arrive. Letters addressed to newspapers. Letters containing coded messages hidden in cryptograms. Letters promising more deaths if they were not published on the front pages. The sender called himself Zodiac. The name was carefully chosen to inspire fear, and it did. Within weeks, Zodiac would become the most infamous and terrifying criminal in American history, not only because of what he had done, but because of what he promised to do. More than 50 years later, Zodiac has never been identified. He was never arrested, and the questions he left behind still echo through case files, archives, and the obsessions of investigators around the world. This is the story of the Zodiac Killer. The first confirmed attack occurred on the night of December 20, 1968, on Lake Herman Road in Benicia. 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen were parked when an unknown gunman approached their vehicle. Betty Lou was shot 5 times in the back as she tried to run. David was killed with a single shot to the head. No witnesses, no apparent motive. 6 months later, on July 4, 1969, Zodiac struck again in Vallejo. 22-year-old Darlene Farron and 19-year-old Michael Mageau were sitting in a parking lot near Blue Rock Springs Park. A car pulled up beside them. A man stepped out carrying a flashlight and a gun. Darlene was killed. Michael survived, becoming one of the few living witnesses to Zodiac. About 40 minutes after the attack, the killer himself called the Vallejo Police Department. In a calm and measured voice, he described the crimes in precise detail, including information only the murderer could have known. "I want to report a double murder," he said. Then he hung up. 1 month later, in August 1969, 3 identical letters arrived simultaneously at the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter contained 1/3 of a coded message written in symbols. The author demanded that the letters be published on the newspaper's front pages, or there would be more killings. The cipher, known as the Z408, contained 408 symbols divided into 3 sections. Contrary to Zodiac's expectations, it was solved within a single week, not by the police or the FBI, but by a high school teacher and his wife, Donald and Betty Hardin. The decoded message was disturbing. The killer described the pleasure he found in murder and promised to continue. On September 27, 1969, Zodiac attacked at the shores of Lake Berryessa. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were enjoying a picnic when a hooded man approached them, wearing a homemade costume with the Zodiac symbol displayed on his chest. He bound the victims and repeatedly stabbed them. Cecilia died 2 days later. Brian survived and provided a remarkably detailed account of the attack. Before leaving, Zodiac did something unlike anything he had done before. He wrote on the victim's car door. Using a marker, he listed the dates and locations of his previous attacks, then added the date and time of that day's assault. It was a cold, calculated signature, almost instructional, as if he wanted to teach the world exactly who he was and what he had done. 16 days later, on October 11, 1969, Zodiac carried out his last confirmed attack. 29-year-old cab driver Paul Stein was shot in the head while parked in San Francisco's Presidio Heights neighborhood. The killer wiped blood from the back seat, cut away a piece of the victim's shirt as proof, and vanished into the city's dark streets on foot. 3 young police officers were less than a block away from the crime scene and spotted a man matching the suspect's description. But an incorrect radio dispatch instructed them to look for a black male, even though witnesses had described a middle-aged white man. Zodiac walked right past them, briefly spoke with officers who had no idea who he was, and disappeared into the night. Between 1969 and 1974, Zodiac sent at least 20 confirmed letters to newspapers, police departments, and even attorneys. Every letter was an event. Every envelope arriving at the offices of the San Francisco Chronicle or the Examiner sparked panic, journalistic excitement, and public fear in equal measure. The killer had turned the media into his stage. Several letters contained physical evidence from the crimes, blood-stained pieces of Paul Stein's shirt. The killer mailed them as trophies, and as proof that the letters were genuine. "This is the Zodiac speaking," many of them began, a phrase that would become one of the most recognizable and unsettling lines in American criminal history. In one of his most disturbing letters, Zodiac claimed responsibility for 37 murders. Investigators could confidently confirm only 5 victims, but the true number may never be known. The claim was deliberate, to create uncertainty, expand the terror, and make every unsolved death seem like it could have been his. In November 1969, Zodiac sent a second cipher, the Z340, consisting of 340 characters. Unlike the first cipher, this one resisted decades of attempts by professional cryptographers, intelligence agencies, and code-breaking enthusiasts around the world. It remained unsolved for 51 years, until December 2020, when an international team of amateur researchers finally cracked it during the COVID-19 pandemic. In October 1969, Zodiac deliberately escalated the level of fear. He sent a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle threatening to attack a school bus unless a story about him appeared on the front page. Schools across San Francisco went on alert. Police increased patrols throughout the city. The attack never happened, but the fear had already achieved its purpose. One of Zodiac's most mysterious letters included a section of a map with instructions for locating a bomb, or so he claimed. It contained astronomical symbols, distorted coordinates, and references to Mount Diablo. Experts analyzed the map for years. No bomb was ever found, yet the possibility alone kept both law enforcement and the public in a constant state of anxiety. In January 1974, Zodiac sent his last confirmed letter, criticizing a newly released film called The Exorcist and referencing the musical The Mikado. After that came silence. Following 5 years of terror, letters, and cryptic messages, Zodiac simply stopped communicating. Whether he stopped killing or merely stopped claiming responsibility remains a question to this day. From the very beginning, the Zodiac investigation was fragmented and frustrating. 3 different police departments, Benicia, Vallejo, and San Francisco, were investigating crimes that clearly shared the same perpetrator, yet there was no centralized coordination, no unified database, and none of the forensic resources available today. The FBI monitored the case, but lacked direct jurisdiction to take control. Detective Dave Toschi of the San Francisco Police Department became the human face of the investigation. Meticulous, driven, and widely respected, Toschi devoted years of his career to hunting Zodiac. He would later inspire the detective character in Dirty Harry and the investigator portrayed by Mark Ruffalo in David Fincher's Zodiac. The Zodiac case file grew larger every week. Survivor testimonies, handwriting analyses, fingerprint examinations that produced only partial results, insufficient for identification, DNA testing decades later. Every lead ended in a dead end. Every suspect was eventually ruled out. The killer seemed ghost-like, present everywhere, yet identifiable nowhere. One of the investigation's rare breakthroughs came from outside law enforcement. Science teacher Donald Hardin and his wife Betty spent an entire weekend working on the ZD408 cipher. Using frequency analysis techniques, identifying symbol combinations likely representing the most common letters in English, they cracked the code in just 8 days. Police had spent weeks without success. For many years, the primary suspect was Arthur Leigh Allen, a retired chemical technician from Vallejo. He wore a Zodiac brand watch. He had a history of disturbing behavior. Surviving witnesses said he resembled Zodiac. Yet DNA testing conducted in 2002 excluded Allen as the author of the letters. He had already died in 1992, taking whatever secrets he may have held with him. The forensic science of the era was primitive compared to modern standards. Fingerprints recovered from crime scenes and letters were too incomplete for definitive identification. DNA analysis did not yet exist as an investigative tool. Correspondence was examined manually by handwriting experts. All investigators knew for certain was that Zodiac was intelligent, methodical, and entirely without remorse. One of the most important figures in the Zodiac story was not a police officer but Robert Graysmith, a cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle who became obsessed with the case. Over the years, Graysmith assembled a massive archive of evidence, suspects, and analyses. His book Zodiac, published in 1986, became the definitive reference on the case and later served as the foundation for David Fincher's 2007 film. Graysmith's work demonstrated something the police had struggled to accomplish, connecting the dots. Yet even after years of exhaustive research, the result remained the same. Zodiac had left clues, but never enough. It was as though he knew precisely how much to reveal to captivate the public without being caught. A masterfully calculated performance of terror. Over the years, Zodiac sent 4 ciphers, known to experts as the Z408, Z340, Z13, and Z32. Each posed a different challenge, featuring unique structures and increasing levels of complexity. To the killer, these ciphers were more than messages. They were declarations of intellectual superiority, a way of telling the world he was smarter than everyone trying to catch him. Z408, the first cipher, used 54 different symbols to represent the 26 letters of the alphabet. Common letters such as E and T were assigned multiple symbols to complicate frequency analysis. Even so, the Hardens solved it by assuming the text likely contained the word kill repeatedly. They were right. The decoded message revealed the killer's mind in its rawest form. He described murder as his greatest pleasure and claimed that those he killed would become his slaves in the afterlife. The message ended with an undeciphered section that Zodiac claimed contained his identity. Decades later, that final portion remains the subject of debate among experts. Z340, mailed in November 1969, became the Great Wall of the case. Unlike the first cipher, it contained row and column transpositions that rendered traditional frequency analysis nearly useless. The FBI examined it. The NSA examined it. Academic experts around the world tried and failed. For 51 years, it remained the greatest unsolved cryptographic challenge in criminal history. In December 2020, during the COVID-19 lockdowns, American web designer David Oranchak led a team of 3 amateur researchers who finally solved the Z340 cipher. The breakthrough came from recognizing a diagonal transposition pattern that made the code unreadable through conventional methods. The decoded message did not reveal the killer's name, but it confirmed Zodiac's unmistakable voice, style, and arrogance. The message essentially stated that the killer did not fear the gas chamber because he had already secured salvation in paradise, and that anyone attempting to uncover his identity would become his next victim. It contained no useful evidence, yet it was filled with Zodiac's unmistakable voice, arrogant, threatening, and deliberately enigmatic. The Z1013 and Z1032 ciphers remain unsolved to this day. They are too short to allow reliable statistical analysis, which may have been intentional. Some experts believe one of them could contain Zodiac's real name, or they may contain nothing at all, just another trap set by a killer who loved playing games with the minds of those pursuing him. In October 1969, the San Francisco Police Department released a composite sketch based on witness descriptions from the murder of Paul Stine. The man depicted was white, between 35 and 45 years old, with brown hair, round-rimmed glasses, and an athletic build. The image would become one of the most famous police sketches in American criminal history, and also one of the most controversial, as different witnesses described slightly different features. Arthur Leigh Allen remains the most frequently discussed suspect. The coincidences were remarkable. He owned a Zodiac brand diving watch. He used phrases that appeared in the letters. A friend claimed Allen once said he wanted to call himself Zodiac and kill people. Yet DNA testing conducted in 2002 on saliva samples from the letters did not match Allen's profile. For many investigators, that settles the matter. For others, it only raises more questions. Other suspects were investigated over the decades. One of them was Lawrence Kane, a man whose brain injury affected his impulse control and who lived near several crime scenes. Independent researchers argued that Kane was connected to multiple aspects of the case. However, no physical evidence ever directly linked him to Zodiac. In 2014, a man named Gary Stewart published a book claiming that his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., was Zodiac. Stewart based his theory on handwriting analysis, historical records of his father's life, and physical similarities to the composite sketch. The theory generated enormous media attention, but forensic experts and investigators identified major inconsistencies that made the claim unlikely. Over 5 decades, more than 2,500 suspects have been investigated by authorities. Every one of them was eliminated due to insufficient evidence. The case remains technically open with the San Francisco Police Department, and every new forensic analysis, theory, or published book briefly rekindles hope for a definitive answer that never seems to arrive. In 2018, relatives of one of the victims in an investigative group known as the Casebreakers announced that they had identified Zodiac as Gary Francis Poste, a California house painter who died in 2018. The FBI and the San Francisco Police Department reviewed the evidence and dismissed it as insufficient. The case remained open, and Zodiac's true identity, if it can ever be known, remained a secret. The official Zodiac case file fills multiple boxes within the San Francisco Police Department archives. It contains more than 1,000 pages of witness statements, analyses, and correspondence. It is one of the most thoroughly documented cases in American criminal history, and paradoxically one of the least resolved. Every piece of evidence points towards someone. No piece of evidence identifies that person with certainty. Zodiac's impact on American culture was immediate and profound. In 1971, only 2 years after the crimes, the film Dirty Harry premiered, starring Clint Eastwood as Detective Harry Callahan pursuing a serial killer clearly inspired by Zodiac. The movie's villain, Scorpio, used a similar symbol, mailed letters to police, and terrorized San Francisco. Zodiac had entered the American cultural imagination. In 2007, David Fincher, the director of C7 and Fight Club, released Zodiac, widely considered by critics to be the finest film ever made about a serial killer. Starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr., the movie portrayed the obsession investigators and journalists developed with the case. More than a thriller, it was a meditation on what happens when the search for answers consumes an entire life. Dozens of books, documentaries, television series, and podcasts have been created about the case. Zodiac inspired characters in films such as C7 and Copycat, and in series like Mindhunter and American Horror Story. Popular culture transformed him into an archetype, the killer too intelligent to be caught, the monster who inhabits reason as much as instinct. The true crime phenomenon, entertainment based on real criminal cases, owes much to the Zodiac story. The combination of unsolved ciphers, multiple suspects, police failures, and the killer's theatrical personality created the perfect formula for collective obsession. Today, online communities with tens of thousands of members continue to analyze every letter, every cipher, and every detail of the case. Behind all the cultural fascination lie real lives that were destroyed. David Faraday was 17. Betty Lou Jensen was 16. Darlene Ferrin left behind a young daughter. Paul Stein was a graduate student in philosophy. Cecilia Shepard had only recently finished college. They are more than names in a case file. They are lives brutally and arbitrarily cut short by someone who was never held accountable. The victims' families carried the burden of unanswered justice for decades. Some devoted their lives to pushing for renewed investigations. Others died without ever receiving answers. To them, Zodiac is not a fascinating cultural figure. He is the embodiment of an injustice the system failed to correct. San Francisco still carries the memories. The streets of Presidio Heights, Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, the now quiet newsrooms of the San Francisco Chronicle. Ordinary places that still hold, for those who know where to look, the shadow of something that happened there and was never fully explained. The Zodiac case remains officially open with the San Francisco Police Department. During its most recent public review in 2021, authorities reiterated that the case would never be closed without a definitive identification of the killer. In an era of next-generation DNA analysis, genealogical databases, and artificial intelligence applied to cryptography, there is still technological hope for an answer. In 2023 and 2024, new advances in forensic genomics and AI-powered handwriting analysis were applied to evidence from the case. The results were inconclusive, but the tools continue to improve. If the killer is still alive, he is likely between 80 and 90 years old. If he is dead, he may have taken the secret with him, unless a relative unknowingly provided the answer through an online ancestry database. What makes the Zodiac case different from all the others? It is the unique combination of demonstrated intelligence, calculated theatricality, and complete lack of resolution. The killer knew exactly how to be frightening, not only because of what he did, but because of what he promised and what he never explained. He created a mystery so perfect that it sometimes feels deliberately designed to last forever. Zodiac may have been an ordinary man. He may have been a neighbor, a teacher, or a government employee. He may have lived for decades after his crimes, watching through the media as the myth he created continued to grow. Or he may have died young, taking his secret to the grave. What we know for certain is that, more than half a century later, the simplest question of all, who was Zodiac, still has no answer. And perhaps it never will. Thank you for joining us until the end of this investigation. If this mystery captured your attention, please like this video, share it with others, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Dark Files now, where every mystery leads to another question. Somewhere, buried in forgotten records, hidden within a family secret, or locked inside evidence that has yet to reveal its truth, the final answer may still be waiting. The investigation continues. The questions remain. And the next mystery is already waiting. Until our next investigation. This is Dark Files Now. See you in the next episode.